Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
And this is Fish Jelly.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
Oh, just trying to live life.
You were up late.
It took 3.5 hours to get the tickets to press screenings that I need for my first 48 hours at the Venice Film Festival because their new system was not working whatsoever.
You're leaving on tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So probably next week's podcast will be over Zoom, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it alone again. I feel like a crazy person talking to myself, which I do a lot anyway, but
I don't want to record
it. But to have it recorded is uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. This morning we watched, TMZ did a special on Richard Simmons. First of all, that journalistic...
TMZ.
Well, TMZ is a huge platform, and they do get a lot of... I mean, I've learned a lot of shit, like breaking news from TMZ.
Sure.
And then it takes like 4 hours for, let's say, MSNBC to get it. But, boy, they did like an expose on Richard Simmons that was so drawn out and laborious. Like, there isn't much to this person. He... is because they focus on like how after 2014 he's been missing from the spotlight. Mm-hmm. So they spend maybe like 10 minutes explaining who he is, fine. And then they keep alluding to this disappearance and what it could be, and we know what it is, and we're going to tell you at the end. And all it is he was getting older, his knees are bad, and he doesn't want to be seen as not the vibrant person we all know and many loved. So it's a very simple answer to a question that I don't know that a lot of people are posing.
No, and just could somebody edit together a version of that just gives succinct bits of information that's not completely replaying everything? Oh
my gosh, every segment, because there were commercials, it's just like repeating the same sound bites and the same visuals.
And before the commercial plays, they would play clips from upcoming footage from some journalist saying something that's pithy or sensational kind of, and it's like, oh.
But so obviously Richard Simmons was huge in the 80s and the 90s, because I remember the Deal a Meal and the Sweatin' with the Oldies. Your mom had the Sweatin'.
We would listen to Sweatin' to the Oldies, or I'd listen to my mother working out to that, but it probably helped me develop a great affinity for a catalog of songs from that period.
Sure.
Like Wendy.
Well, and I remember he sold those plates that were designed to be smaller so the portions looked bigger. But yeah, he's a very popular personality who, of course, was, it was kind of uncomfortable because he's obviously gay or... back then, just like very flamboyant and effeminate, and
he's one of those people, much like Vincent Price, who somebody, usually my dad in the room, would be like, "God, isn't he gay?" Would send me scrambling to my room because I didn't want to have to be confronted with being anything like that, of course.
I used to work in a salon on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood. And so the Hollywood tours and the TMZ tour vans with all the people who pay with the open air top, drive by. And Richard Simmons would often be like, the salon had a huge window that faced Sunset Boulevard, and there would be, Richard Simmons would be like out in front of the salon waiting for this tour truck to come by, and he would greet the people. And once I recall him coming into the salon to use the restroom, but a very vibrant public persona.
Yes, and of course what he stands for and what he's preaching basically is all sounds good, but there's always been a factor that made me kind of uncomfortable watching him interact with people in a way that I feel that same discomfort for Jonathan Van Ness.
Sure. Well, in the sense that they both feel like clowns to me.
Well, that it's again, I have no problem with anyone being flamboyant. It's just the level. I don't know that you can realistically be authentic with that many people. So to me, there's a large part of that is an act. And we're not equipped to have to deal with people at that level.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel more for Richard Simmons than I do like a Jonathan Van Ness because
Same,
because if we think about all that man who was born in the late 40s
48, yeah.
had to deal with, and he talks in this TMZ special, which I don't recommend watching, but we do get sound bites of him talking about being bullied and like in like junior high or high school, sitting in the bathroom stall and kids like shooting lighter fluid under the stall and setting it afire to try to burn him. And so looking at him, he seems sad. And there are a lot of clips of him just talking and seeming very sad. And, you know, the special is so repetitive because we just keep getting clips of him saying he's lonely, he's a loner, he's a recluse. Like, we get it. Like,
which also speaks to, so he's giving all these people this joy, but it's a one-way street test. Like,
the other thing is like, celebrities, like, that's their job. So just like like the rest of us, at a point we retire from our jobs and we don't want to hear about that shit. You know, the day you retire from your work, the day I retire from my work, I don't want to talk about that shit anymore. I want nothing to do with that job, those people, anything related to it. So I feel like celebrities should enjoy the same luxury of like, he decided to get out of the spotlight because his health was failing and he didn't want to be seen that way. And yeah, he's in his 70s. Like, that man doesn't want to... Talk about sweating to the oldies anymore. I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah,
but moving on, did you read about Harry Styles and like people? There are all these memes about him and the comments he made about like gays in film and.
I read something briefly about him. He doesn't interest me all that much, but
Well, so he was interviewed and was asked about, you know, him being accused of queer baiting.
I've read about that. Yeah.
And then he made a comment, and I'm just paraphrasing some of the quotes, but he's in a new movie where he's playing a gay person. What's that? You read the book.
My Policeman.
My Policeman. He says, it's not like this is a gay story about these gay guys being gay. It's a very human story. It's about love and about wasted time to me. And people feel like that's kind of dismissive because then he goes on to say, there's a line that people are really picking up. Oh, when asked about like the sexual content, he says so much of gay sex in film is two guys going at it, and it kind of removes the tenderness from it. And then people are responding to that saying like, first of all, where is all this like mainstream content of gay guys going at it? Like what is Harry Styles watching? Like gay porn? Like what is his reference point that he thinks there's so much content out there in the mainstream media of gay guys just going at it? When I think many people are arguing, and I would agree, most of the gay content we see that does include sex and love, it's very sanitized.
Yes, and unrealistic. But so is straight sex that we see. Like anytime we see women leaving a bra, and I understand, I don't feel like the actress should have to get naked if she doesn't want to, but that's really not how sex looks. You know, like we still are very, even for the heteros, locked in this puritanical sense of what sexuality should look like.
Right. But I don't know. I don't have feelings about Harry Styles or like him playing this character. I didn't read the book. I don't know why. I think his initial comment made sense to me that, yeah, I'm a guy who identifies as straight, but I read this script. Maybe he read the book and he didn't see it as a gay story. He saw it as a story about wasted time and about love. To me, that makes sense. I think the extra comment about gay sex being just two guys going at it is like, well... I think most people think of sex that way, whether it's between two men, two women, a man and a woman.
Yeah, we have a problem with making erotic scenes feel erotic in most films.
Right, because the way people have sex actually versus what we see on TV and film are very different.
Right, and you know...
So I don't know what he's talking about.
No, yeah... There's a lot of interesting things to unpack about that, but also the queer baitiness, because I read that because he didn't, I don't know if he necessarily defines himself as straight because he has a problem with labels, which I agree with that sentiment, but I think he was accused of somebody saying you never have dated a man in public because he's with Olivia Wilde, who, you know, Jason Sudeikis' ex, who had just directed him in another movie about to come out called Don't Worry, Darling, which I'll see in Venice. You know, there's a lot of weird stories going on about that because Florence Pugh, you know, is the young woman from Midsummer. She's the star of the other Harry Styles movie, who's put out a statement that she's severely limiting the amount of press that she's willing to do. And apparently there's been all kinds of rumblings. She didn't like Olivia Wilde's behavior on set. I don't think the two of them got along very well. As production had started, Shia LaBeouf had been replaced for aggressive behavior on set. There was all that fallout. So I don't know. There's Harry Styles, I think, by the time these two films come out, we'll have a lot of things going on.
I am interested in watching it.
I liked the novel, My Policeman, and I don't. Again, I've said this before. I don't need to know somebody's private life in their bedroom to determine whether or not I think that's the appropriate factor for them playing a character.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, well, we can go on and on about that, but we really don't know people's behavior. So it's like we force labels on people, and then we use that to make a lot of assumptions. But it's like we really don't know what Harry Styles is doing in the privacy of his own whatever. So to say that he shouldn't be, or even the fact that he's queer baiting is like, how do we know he's not queer?
Well, just because. So I need you to sign on the dotted line that you define as this. To me, that's fucking fascism. Like I don't. We do need to get away from binaries.
Well, and where's the line? Like, so then can a person who's not a doctor play a doctor? Can a person who's not an actual mother play a mother? Well, I just don't know.
Okay, so the first trailer I think dropped for Evan Peters playing Jeffrey Dahmer in the Ryan.
Oh, didn't he already play? Oh no, I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, I think that'll be on Netflix.
No, who played Dahmer in that movie with Anne Heche?
I don't know. I don't remember that kid's name.
I like that movie.
Yeah,
that's a good movie.
My Friend Dahmer. But is there going to be a big hubbub about Evan Peters not being gay and then also not a serial killer?
Right. I do think there are lines because it's about respect and about
of course.
Integrity and someone put, I haven't seen this movie, but I still think about Zoe Saldana being Nina Simone, something like that. Is like, okay, I don't know why we need to do it like that.
Yes.
But, and then of course, in the golden era of Hollywood and white characters playing indigenous people and Asian people, yes, by today's standards, I would say that is ridiculous.
And, that goes back into that star theory, right? And reception theory about how there aren't any notable people that we need to generate the money we need for this film. Just going back to Scarlett Johansson playing a trans character. And it's if that's going to be the argument, let these cis people play trans characters, but at the same time, somebody needs to be fostering trans actors then, so that we don't have to have that argument anymore, that we can't have, this nobody is headlining this big budget movie. Well, let's foster these careers and allow people opportunities, but that only happens when we kind of have to have... We do have to have these arguments and these conversations and this level of rigidity at times, but it can't be across the board. Everything has to be context.
Yeah. Moving on, season 2 of Celebrity Drag Race. All I'll say is this week's celebrity who went home was Tom Felicia, who is from the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. He was the interior design person, which was fun because on this episode, Carson Kressley was a judge, who was also on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy with Tom Felicia. So there's that. I thought he was very fun in drag.
Jackie Wood.
His drag name was Jackie Wood. I thought he looked great in drag, and he had a great attitude. He couldn't dance, so ultimately that's what got his ass packing. Mm-hmm. And then the winners were 2 contestants who I still can't recognize their celebrity, their actual self. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a fun little episode. But really what I wanted to talk about was Drag Race Philippines, because we watched episode 3. So even if you're I'm not watching Drag Race Philippines, but you watched, US, I would recommend at least watching episode 3 of Drag Race Philippines. It was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Those queens can sing and dance.
Yes, they can.
And the songs they did, because this episode they had to do one of those Ru songs.
Where they all write their own lyrics. They have girl bands facing off.
Were so good.
Yeah, kind of, I think as catchy as Bing Bang Bong from...
Yeah, and but I mean, even the weakest queen was very strong. And the one who won, Turing, who's a plus size, that bitch gets down.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see her right next to like a Lizzo and wearing her out. Like because she's a person of size and she dances so well and she can sing. I would go see her in concert for sure. So that was a lot of fun. Then their runway theme was like creature, like horror creature. And I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, all their different interpretations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my understanding is in the Philippines, like with horror, like vampires are huge.
Aswang.
So there was a lot of that. There was like a big baby that looked really creepy. One of them had like a baby on stage, and then it was like
triplets.
She had triplets, but one of them was like mechanical and moved.
But then there's an emotional moment where that story is telling about her relationship with her mother.
And she was inspired. So the episode's long. It's like an hour and a half because like of the remaining queens, like 5 of them give these very long, heartfelt talks.
Yes.
Which can be tedious, but it was moving, and I think if you don't plan on watching Drag Race Philippines, I would recommend this episode at least. Anyway, moving on to a question. Someone asked, why do we not like children in film? Do we just hate children, or what's up with that? What's up with that? How would you answer that? First of all, I would say I don't hate children.
I don't hate children.
I think the way I feel about children is how I feel about dogs. That it's not the child or the dog I don't like. It's the parent or the owner.
And how they let their child or dog behave.
Right, or how they act about their child or dog. So that's my general thought about children in the wild. But in film, I think probably the reason I have an aversion to children in film is because acting is hard. I can't do it. I can't imagine, like it seems very difficult to me. And we see a lot of adults who can't act. So then you get these children in film, and if they're not well directed, it's just cringy. And I think you agree. There is nothing worse than like a precocious kid on screen.
I think it's the problem for me is usually precocious children. I can forgive like a new actor, an unprofessional who's giving a performance and seeing that there's some roughness around the edges, but there's maybe an authenticity to it, which I'll gravitate towards. But yeah, that mannered precociousness. Oh no, children don't sound like they're like intelligent 40-year-old drag queens.
I think maybe that's what it is people writing roles like for children, and it's like, but you don't have the voice. Like, it's just hard to write for a character you don't know, right? Like, I wouldn't write for like a 60-year-old Korean lady because I don't know that experience. So then it's the same thing, like these screenwriters writing for children, and they always come across like too old and mature and snarky.
Yes,
and it's just uncomfortable.
And sometimes I think, and then the problem with awarding children, like for the kids that have won Academy Awards, like Anna Paquin or Tatum O'Neal, kind of ruinous to them eventually later on. But I think some of the best child performances what a good director is doing is kind of like tricking the kid. I always think of the film The Fall by Tarsem, which has this really, you watch it and you describe it as like this really great child performance, but that child is not actually performing. She's reacting to the environment placed in front of her and the stimulus that she's given for whatever scene they needed to make. And that's what's so good about it, because she's actually just being a child.
And there are plenty of films where I recall thinking, oh, this kid is like, this character played by this child is working very well.
Yes.
I can't think of any, but yes, I don't automatically dislike children in film.
But if you think of like, remember, I don't know if you remember how wowed everybody was by, the young Dakota Fanning in, would have been the early 2000s. And then kind of all of a sudden people being uncomfortable with like, oh, she's acting like an adult. Even off of camera in interviews, and there's something kind of, Jean Bonnet-ish about that.
Well, even so Millie Bobby Brown is kind of a big part of my life because I have a Google search set up for my own name.
Oh God!
And I get notifications every day because, and I think I've mentioned this before, because Millie Bobby Brown, her current boyfriend or ex-boyfriend we have the same name, and he, in addition to being in a relationship with a famous person, is like a hockey player, I believe. So every day I get notifications about my name, and it's always related to Millie Bobby Brown. But anyway, Millie Bobby Brown did an episode of Hot Ones, and it was so uncomfortable to me because she's she's trying to be like very mature, and she's wearing this outfit that doesn't make sense for the show she's doing, and her makeup is terrible, and her weave looks crazy, and it's just awkward like watching this teenager, because I'm sure I was 10 times more awkward at that age than she was on that show. So it just recalls a lot of cringiness.
Sure.
And I think when I watch kids, it's also kind of cringy. But again, a recent example was that movie Samaritan with Sylvester Stallone. I thought the kid in that, who's supposed to be like a 13-year-old, I thought he did a great job, and the writing felt very authentic. And then we just watched something with a little black girl in it that now is escaping me. Oh, shoot, I wish I could remember. But I recall thinking, like, that little actor did a great job.
You liked the actress from Doctor Sleep, I remember. That was a while ago now.
Oh, yeah, that was a while ago. No, this was recent. But anyway, moving on. So there's nothing in the sorry to this man section, although I know there are mistakes.
Well, I'm kicking myself because while we were filming Out of the Blue, and it dawned on me that Ray Nicholson is Jack Nicholson's son.
Oh, that's right.
I know I referenced the other film versions of Postman Always Rings Twice, but of course his father.
Oh, you also referenced the new Justin Long vampire movie, House of Darkness, but you called it
House of Shadows.
House of Shadows, but it's not House of Shadows, it's House of Darkness, which the review is posted, but it won't drop until Wednesday.
That mistake is in Barbarian.
It's in the Barbarian. Oh, which that review hasn't gone up either. So this is a future apology to a mistake, because that review's not up yet.
That's what you're referencing, where I said it wrong, right?
Yes. So,
or did I say it wrong in Out of the Blue too?
No, it was Barbarian.
Okay.
My apologies. But speaking of that, we have two reviews coming for Justin Long films, Barbarian and House of Darkness, which are on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
Because one you loved,
and
the other you hated. And I hated too.
Neil LaBute, my God, man, what's happening?
We can't, I guess we shouldn't be talking about it, but anyway. Films released we didn't cover, something called Alienoid.
I asked you if you wanted to cover that, a science fiction film about an alienoid, and it sounds like a very complicated plot structure, hopping timelines, that somebody asked if we were going to review, but we didn't make time for it. I'm forgetting the name. Choi Dong-hoon was the director.
Where are we? My battery's about to die on my laptop. Breaking.
I had hoped we had made time for this, but we just didn't. I saw this out of Sundance when it was called 892, starring John Boyega and Nicole Beharie, directed by Avi Damaris Corbin. It's being released this week, and now be retitled Breaking, based on a true story.
Next, Me Time.
John Hamburg, who... Me Time is a terrible title for a film. It's a Netflix release, especially considering John Hamburg's other film that I'm familiar with is called Why Him? If you remember that, with James Franco.
No.
And Bryan Cranston. We saw that on the Fox lot a couple of years ago. Anyway, the new Mark Wahlberg, Kevin Hart movie, and Regina Hall. Didn't make time for that.
Next, Last Journey of Paul...
WR.
I
had this is a 2020 release, and if I had known who was in it ahead of time, I might have made a point to try to see it, but I didn't. But it's a 2020 French film directed by Romain Quirot, but it's starring Jean Reno and a personal friend, Paul Hemy.
Oh, your Costa Rica friend?
My Costa Rica friend.
You might want to pull up the email I sent you in case my battery dies. It's my little checklist.
Okay.
Lastly on the list, Rogue One.
That Star Wars movie that's being re-released.
Oh. Okay, movies we watch for fun. So you got to see a screening of Jaws 3D.
Yes, and that was... Jaws had never been shown. Not Jaws 3D with Dennis Quaid, but
the original Jaws in 3D
from 1975.
Where did you see that?
The Regal LA Live downtown.
And how was the experience?
It looked great. I haven't watched that. It's been probably a decade since I watched the first Jaws.
We watched it together.
Yeah, but back
that was a decade ago
in Minneapolis. Yeah, because I think at that time you hadn't seen it. Was that right?
I'm sure I'd seen parts of it. Maybe I don't remember.
Yes, but it's a funny thing with age, the things that you notice more as you get older. I would invite anybody that sees Spielberg's The Fabelmans this fall, which is about his childhood, to go back and revisit some of his works, because I could not see this dynamic between Roy Scheider and Lorraine Gary as the parents in Jaws, and the things going on. Especially, I think there are some really subtle things going on with Lorraine Gary as this housewife that's been uprooted from her original community and really has no one to speak with. Like the first time she meets Richard Dreyfuss in that, if you just are casually watching, it's like, God, she seems hysterical, but it's this woman that has no kind of social outlet whatsoever.
Next, you continued watching that series, The Kingdom.
Yes. Oh God, my second day in Venice is going to be long, because most of the competition films are 2 and 3 hours long, and then there's this 5-hour Lars von Trier event. God, I don't think I'd ever seen the second season of The Kingdom from 1997. It is real silly, over the top, and not bad, but just trying to be provocative. I sent you that screenshot of Udo Kier, and because you asked if that was real.
Oh, like with a bloated abdomen?
Well, he's like a monster because he's born. Has a ghost dad. Shout out to Bill Cosby, I guess. And the ending of the first season is his Udo Kier's head coming out of this woman's vagina, but then he's got this like mangled, childlike creature body that grows exponentially into what you saw. Yes.
Next, The Stolen Children.
Oh, and side note, I've seen like 20 screenings of Venice sidebar items, so I haven't had a lot of time to do some research that I needed to catch up on some filmmakers' works. But I'd never seen a Gianni Amelio film, has a new film in competition. He's kind of a very notable Italian filmmaker who's worked with quite a few like actors that I like. So I watched an early success for him, 1992's The Stolen Children, which is about this police basically escorting this young brother and sister to a children's home. They found the sister, who was 13, had been being prostituted for 2 years by her mother, and kind of the behaviors and how news has spread about this girl affect their journey.
Next, so I watched something called Eating Out, All You Can Eat. So there's this series called Eating Out.
Yes, I'm familiar with the series.
That are like 5 installments. So Eating Out is number 3. Or I'm sorry, All You Can Eat is number 3. And that's from 2009, I think. Mm-hmm. And boy, so it's a lot more fun than I recall. Like, it's like whoever wrote it is pretty funny.
I remember finding Drew Droege funny.
Drew Droge's in the next one.
Oh, okay.
But drama camp. But yeah, it's not PC. A lot of the language is, feels dated. But consider for what it is, like all those gay movies where it's just hunky guys without their shirts on and lots of butts and penises. It's actually pretty funny. Mm-hmm. Then I watched, someone recommended we review Shark Side of the Moon.
Oh my God.
So I watched it. That shit was terrible. But it's terrible because, so the production value is higher than you would think. It actually looks pretty good. Like, because it's basically like hybrid shark humans who live on the moon, but they're trying to get back to Earth. And a NASA ship crash lands on the moon, and these shark mutants are trying to get back down to Earth, and they're somewhat foiled, but then there's like a twist at the end. Anyway, it's silly. Like, a lot of effort went into that movie. Like, it looks pretty decent. Like, it's better quality than like a Sharknado movie.
What about the Raquan?
Well, it's very different. Nothing about Shark Side of the Moon is creepy at all. Because there are really no sharks in the water. Like, they're all like walking. But the leader shark, she's kind of like this sexier woman, and she looks like maybe she's the type of shark that has like a narrow head. So she kind of her proportions are very sexy, and then she's speaking like accented English. So it's kind of fun watching her.
I don't know why what you're saying just reminded me of Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, but it did.
So Yeah, watch that. And then lastly, I watched Michael Jackson's This Is It,
Kenny Ortega.
where it features a lot of Kenny Ortega.
Well, he directed it.
Trying real hard to seem... you could tell he knew the camera was on him.
Mm-hmm.
And the microphone was hot. It's not that I forgot how talented Michael Jackson is, but it's kind of amazing watching him. Like, he really was so super talented. Mm-hmm. And even as frail as he was, his moves were all there and the voice was very strong, but he definitely seems affected.
Yes.
Like, I mean, imagine being like the most famous person in the world for a long time and then being hated and reviled and like, just like the ups and downs he went through, and then combine that with like the changes to his appearance, and then him doing this like elaborate show that's supposed to be like his curtain call, and then that got... Because remember, the original dates, there were only like... There weren't that many. And then all of a sudden it exploded and there were going to be like numerous dates. Like all the pressure for this person and all the work that went into it. And in the documentary film, we don't really see all of the work that went into it, but it's very obvious that like, because whenever we see him on stage, it's clear that he's rehearsed already because he knows all the choreography and he's doing it as well as the dancers are. We never really see the choreography being learned. We never see his process. We just see his process on stage. And it's very clear he understands the stage and he has a very clear idea of what he wants to look like and sound like. So it's like, it's just so sad to think that he was a person who was very good at his job and he just couldn't do his job because of outside factors. And whether or not he was a pedophile, you know, he wasn't charged of it, I don't know. But, you know, aside from that, just, you know, the people who loved him and even the people who didn't love him, who just scrutinized him, really made it difficult for him to just do a job that he was actually fantastic at. So, because even a lot of his music towards the end was influenced by a lot of the negative aspects of his life and career.
Oh, Scream, yeah.
But, you know, tabloid junk. I mean, there are a lot of songs that are the money, and it's just like, oh, it's too bad that he couldn't have had a more sort of like normal life, because I think his music would have reflected that. We would have got more thrillers and less, you know, history.
Unless I'm tired of rumors starting.
Right, yeah. All right, projects of interest, something called The Front Room.
Yes, the Eggers brothers, who are the brothers of Robert Eggers, they apparently are getting on board with A24 and developing a film starring Brandy.
Brandy Norwood, sister of Ray J.
Oh, don't do her like that.
Goddaughter of Whitney, no.
Called The Front Room, a horror film.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
mainly because of Brandy.
That should be interesting. Yeah, I mean,
well, and like a notable black woman leading a horror film.
I mean, Octavia Spencer and Ma is pretty damn good.
I mean, there aren't that many examples.
There aren't.
So this is exciting.
That's exciting, and maybe she'll feel a little better now that since Beyonce didn't mention her in the Vogue remix.
Break My Soul remix. She didn't mention Mariah Carey either.
No.
Or Patti LaBelle.
Yeah, I'm kind
or
of
Shaka Khan.
I'm kind of shocked. Yeah, Shaka and Patty are kind of.
You know who she did mention?
Janet.
Yeah,
no. And Helen Flash.
So y'all can stay mad.
Sade's birth name.
Helen Folashade Adu.
Because I was like, wait, who's this?
Because it's three names. It's Helen, then it's Folashade, and then it's Adu.
Yeah.
But the way she says it, Helen Folashade Adu, I'm like, who the hell is that? You had to tell me who it was.
Because I'm like, who is this woman? And you leave out Patti LaBelle.
Well, and then the opening of that little sequence, she says Queen Mother, Madonna, and everyone assumes she's saying Aaliyah.
Yeah, but she's not.
Because then she says Aaliyah again in the end, but she's not saying Queen Mother Aaliyah. She's saying Queen Mother, Madonna, Aaliyah. Mm-hmm. So let Beyonce call out who she wants to call out.
I know, but I think what tickles me is she leaves Betty Davis in there.
She probably... Who knows? I mean, but this is the fun part of like, let this person, you know, name the people who have an impact on her. Like, y'all are assuming that, like, yeah, it's just funny to me that people think that, like, just because that's your icon, Beyonce is her own icon. Mm-hmm. She doesn't necessarily, like, Mariah Carey may not be
for her.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Well, just like, Madonna's original Vogue, again, she's dipping into studio era Hollywood, but there were a couple black people Madonna could have mentioned Dorothy Dandridge or Sidney Poitier, but she didn't. And
True, but again, just like I'll apply to her, like that I did to Beyonce, like it's people who, if you ask me my favorite singers, I'm not going to include a lot of people like.
Yeah.
So
no, I
if you only give me 15 seconds to name them, I'll probably name Janet 3 times.
I agree.
There'll be some Fantasia in there.
As a positive side, we've come to a point where there are too many to encapsulate in one song.
Who name 5 female musical artists who you really like?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Oh God.
I would. I'd have to.
Right off the top of your head, I'm thinking Janet, Fantasia, Patti LaBelle, Mary J. Blige. Yeah.
Madonna, Donna Summer.
Madonna. I would add Madonna.
Diana Ross, Megan Thee Stallion, and
name a female rapper you like.
God, Lil' Kim comes to mind first, but she's
Lil' Kim came to my mind first.
But she's not my favorite female rapper.
She's not my, yeah. You like an Eve song a lot.
Oh, yes.
Eve.
Eve, she's so lazy in that music video. Like, she's not going to do shit either.
But that's after she married that rich white man. So she's like, I'm not going to do much but stand here.
She's like, I'm going to go shoot this music video today, and I'm just going to sing
in Belgium, and I'm just going to stand here.
I'm just going to walk down these streets and
the song is good. It's called Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah, from like 20...
Oh, God, like 12 or
12?
something.
Yeah. So check that one out. Next, something called Projects of Interest. I saw the TV Glow.
Oh, yeah. Jane Schoenbrunn, who directed a film I think we were both pretty cool on, but likes a lot of the ideas of it, that creepypasta film, We're All Going to the World's Fair. Mm-hmm. They're directing a new film that has a really interesting cast lined up, including Justice Smith, who I usually like Justice Smith. I did not like Justice Smith's performance in The Voyeurs, but fascinating. I don't know. You'll have to read about it.
Lastly, something called Trespassers.
That is also a fascinating sounding project. Although the director's first film, Angel, starring Marion Cotillard, Vanessa Filho was the director I hated, but she has a new film called Trespassers that's lined up Nina Haas and Vanessa Paradis, and it sounds really interesting. It's about this true story of these two women, Lucy Schwab and Suzanne Malherbe. They were surrealist artists who worked under male pseudonyms and kind of presented themselves in male drag as Claude Cahun and Marcel Moore. They were stepsisters and lovers, and they launched resistance against the Nazis on the island of Jersey during World War II. But there are so many strange elements, including the lovely ladies. I especially love Nina Haas, that I can't wait to see that.
All right, so the secret film today was Nick's selection. It's called Mishima, A Life in 4 Parts. Is that what it's called?
A Life in 4 Chapters.
A Life in 4 Chapters. It's a 1985 film directed by Paul Schrader.
Yes.
This was your selection.
This would have been for the Grease selection, but Olivia died and you hadn't seen Grease, so.
So, and then you wanted me to watch this because Paul Schrader...
Paul Schrader's one of my favorites, and I'm about to see him in direct Sigourney Weaver in Master Gardener.
So, did you think I would find this movie enjoyable? Like, why did you want me to watch it?
This is a soundtrack I listen to all the time. The score while I'm writing. I think it's a perfect score. By Philip Glass. I love it. I love the production design. By Aiko Ishioka, and I had just read my first Mishima. I've seen this film when it first was released on Criterion, but several years ago. But I'd never read any novels by Mishima, and as you know, I just read The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, and that in conjunction with the new Schrader premiere, I wanted to share this with you.
I agree. The score is glorious, and the visuals are striking. I just think it's funny that for a podcast, like those aren't really things we could talk about that well. So I don't have any notes for this movie because so I'll just say my overall thought. I think it's a really interesting way to approach telling like a historical figure story. So Mishima is a Japanese writer. I know that.
Yeah.
What else about him is notable?
Oh, well, the film is set on the last day of his life in 1970 when he very infamously committed seppuku.
So the reason I posed that question is because I didn't know anything about Mishima except what is told to us in the title credits and then the movie itself. And I left the movie not really knowing. I read about him a little during and after the movie, so I have some extra knowledge. But from the movie itself, it felt like a person would need to go into it having some interest in the subject to really get more from it. But the way the story is told is 4 chapters it's broken into 4 chapters, but then the story is told like an actress playing Mishima, and that's in black and white.
Ken Ogata. Well, all the flashbacks are in black and white, but the present day of his death is in color.
There's a lot going on. So we meet him on the last day of his life where he goes to see some political figure because he has some agenda he wants to give to like everyone. And he's thinking everyone's going to buy into it, which is basically he wants to reinstate like the emperor of Japan. So he's created his own army. This is like modern day for Mishima in the
late 60s or
late 60s.
Yeah.
And
it's a symbolic army that they the powers that be just kind of allowed to happen. They're allowed to go through
because he's a notable person,
and they're allowed to go through combat training and weapons training.
Yeah, it's really odd. But the film doesn't. I feel like this actual person's life was so interesting and dark, and there's so many things about it that would be so captivating. But as it is, it's very like, oh, just this like notable guy in Japan has his own personal army, and he's decided that he wants like the emperor reinstated. So he goes to a high-ranking official's office, and he's able to get in there because he is notable. Like the security
This
says,
general,
like, yeah, like, oh, sure, go, and you can see the general. And when he gets there with his army, they overtake him and basically say, you're going to arrange for me to speak to all of the dignitaries or whomever to present my plan. And if you don't, I'm going to kill you and then kill myself. So the general agrees. And Mishima gets out there and talks his shit, and they're like, girl, bye. We want nothing to do with this old bullshit-ass plan. So then he goes back to the general's office and commits seppuku. But that's sort of where the film starts. But then all the flashbacks that we get of Mishima are in black and white. But each chapter is accented with one of Mishima's
like a
publishings.
reenactment from one of his publishings that reflects kind of the overall motifs of his life.
So what do we know about Mishima? He seemed to be a homosexual from what I saw. And then he's also obsessed with youth and aesthetics.
And decay and this collapsing of sex, pleasure, beauty, and death.
That's all I got from the movie. So the one note I did have, but my computer died, was something to the effect of like, I think that this film's very effective in its visuals and obviously the score. I think it's a very an interesting way to tell a story. But the way I felt about this characterization is how I feel about people in real life who are obsessed with youth and beauty. It becomes tedious because it clouds everything they say and do. And I think that's how I felt watching this character. Like, oh, he just... like this army he's made of like these younger, I'm assuming attractive men to him. And then a lot of the things he says in the modern day about like, oh, I'm an old man. Like that self-deprecating, but obviously obsessive. It's uncomfortable to watch, but the film, and I think maybe it's a cultural thing, like in Japanese culture, people are very mannered, and the presentation of the story, because it was in conjunction with Mishima's estate, seems very respectful of him as a person.
There were a lot of problems I was reading before we recorded this that I wasn't quite aware of, because I've only actually seen the version that Criterion put out, which is with Ken Ogata's Japanese narration. This was released in the States with Roy Scheider giving English language narration.
Oh,
because of course we don't want people to
wait. The man from Jaws?
Yeah, they don't.
That's Paul. Oh,
that's Roy Scheider. Paul Schrader.
Right.
Schrader.
Yes, I was thinking they were brothers.
No, but Paul Schrader's brother Lawrence did co-write this film.
Okay.
And also, there was support from Mishima estate, but they demanded that Schrader remove the gay bar scene.
Let me tell you something. A 40-year-old queen obsessed with youth and vitality and beauty, like, there is no way Mishima was not didn't have a house full of boys and doing all kinds of nasty shit and like probably a lot of like self-harm as it relates to his body and food, and the film doesn't show any of that. And what's interesting is one of his works, I think it's chapter 2, is this
Kyoto's house.
Is that what it is? Where this man meets this woman, and she basically says, "I want to buy your body. Like I'll pay off I'll give you enough money that you can pay off all of your mother's debt, and in exchange, I'll own your body." And then we get a scene where she's kind of mutilating him, which just amounts to we see her cutting his like torso.
She's like, "Your skin's so beautiful, I had to cut it."
And then he says he enjoys it, it feels good, and then we get a scene later on where he takes off his shirt and he's covered in bruises and cuts.
He's become a bodybuilder and can't go to the gym anymore because of it.
So it's like, telling it sounds like, oh my God, this shit sounds crazy, but it really comes across very sedate and polite almost.
I think I get the sense that Schrader was trying to be respectful while also encompassing the reality of this notable person.
I'm not a David Lynch fan, but I almost feel like it would have been like, imagine if David Lynch took this movie and remade it in his own flavor. I feel like that's kind of what I would want it to be. Is a little more sort of like fucking psychedelic and abusive and toxic in a way that this person probably was.
Yes.
But then this movie is very well put together.
Oh, it's a beautiful art
Yes,
house
I can
film.
see why it's a Criterion selection.
It premiered in Cannes in competition. I think it was banned in Japan. I think there were bomb threats anytime it tried to play there.
Oh, God.
Like people, so I think you have to keep in mind that how this crystallized in 1985 was. Well, it seems sedate today, but I think was far ahead of its time.
Sure. I would recommend it. It's definitely like, it would be something like if you have a little micro cinema in your town, or like a cute like landmark, or like a cute theater on a Sunday afternoon.
But even just listening to how this version of Mishima was written and the things he's saying, I go to West Hollywood and hear that any day of the week.
Well, I'm also recommending that because I think you have to be in the mood, and then also because of the soundtrack, I think it would be nice to sit in a theater and hear it. And then it's beautiful to look at. But yes, what you just said, that's all I kept thinking is like, I know so many men who are just obsessed with, and that's probably really what I would just end up talking about relating to this movie, is like this unhealthy association with youth and beauty, especially in the gay community.
Well,
it really prevents people from being happy.
My first encounter with discovering who Mishima was because as an undergrad I did my thesis on Suddenly Last Summer, which is of course infused like a pagan story infused with Saint Sebastian, Sebastian Venable, named after the patron saint of gays who suffers from the poisoned arrows, and it's that painting of Saint Sebastian that influences Mishima and kind of collapses that.
There's a famous portrait of him as Saint Sebastian, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Because I have a book of that's all about musings on Saint Sebastian. But so I'd been aware of him for a long time, but mostly as just this famous Japanese writer who committed public seppuku. Which is crazy. But all of the weird things behind it are crazy as well. It's just, I find it fascinating. But again, yes, it's a really unique way for a biopic as well.
It is.
And I like that it's kind of in the form of a tetralogy, because his magnum opus are these 4 books, beginning with Spring Snow. I'm forgetting the last one. But as soon as he published his last one is when he did this. Like, he knew that this was predestined. And if you look through the themes of all of his work, somebody's killing themselves, somebody's via seppuku, somebody's all of these things track. Like he's telling us from the get-go that he was going to do this.
Well, I did get a little emotional watching it, just because I thought like it just like I was very much in my head about like, it's okay to get older. It's okay to not have a six-pack. It's okay to not look like the people you worship. You shouldn't be worshiping other people's looks. Like, it doesn't, how you look, like, I know it's a joke, and it's a joke I've made before where someone says looks don't matter, and I'll respond like, are you sure? Like, I mean, but they don't. Someone will find you appealing the way you are, and what makes people attractive is not necessarily their physical features. It's like their energy and their personality, and it's just frustrating watching a character.
Well, especially somebody so talented and intelligent, and they're so wrapped up over something so, pedestrian, really.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. But I think that also speaks to the gay community and kind of the shadows that we had to crawl out of, basically, and then.
But this story doesn't really address any of that relating to his sexuality.
I don't think that it had the agency to do so.
Sure, but...
And also coming from a straight director. But, Schrader has always been very good at including all... Like, he is a thematic director. He likes sexually repressed. He likes guilt. That proliferates all of his screenplays, really, and films. Because he wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull.
Which I haven't seen.
Oh, we need to remedy that sometime. But, Cat People, his remake of Cat People, I absolutely love.
I've seen that.
You've seen American Gigolo, which you aren't crazy about, but also for a film in 1980.
I did enjoy American Gigolo. I just had issues with...
Richard Gere as a prostitute, but...
He could have been a prostitute. I just think, like, his casting... The way that character is crafted with the casting seemed a little strange, but I did enjoy that.
No, but
Lauren Hutton is so fun to watch.
Yes, but and Bill Duke as this homosexual,
and we didn't agree on Bill Duke's purpose. Yeah,
but even getting that far in a U.S. film with these major people in 1980. Kudos to Schrader for I think even addressing that. But
and actually, I had heard of that movie. Like, I knew that it was a thing, but I think after watching it, that is not what I thought the movie would be about. It was definitely more edgy than I thought. I thought it was going to be about this older woman with this younger man.
Well, because we've been taught to think that everything's sanitized like that now too.
So then watching it was like, oh shit!
And I was just thinking,
there's murder and
think of the bookends of that decade, 1980 to 1990. You have Richard Gere at each end of the decade involved in a sex work film, from either side of the trade, and how by 1990, Pretty Woman, how everything was just sanitized.
Yeah. But that's all I have about this movie.
I think it's fascinating to see what they were able to do with Japanese culture in the 40s, 50s, and what a gay bar might look like. And
we get one scene, like one little small scene of like what looks like a gay bar,
where a younger person of interest tells him he's flabby, and he
gets upset
and runs away. But that person tracks him down to say they're sorry.
Yeah. Well, again, like. It just that's all I took away from the story. Really, is I really had to extract something from it relating to this character and his feelings about himself, and that was it. Just like it's so sad to occupy a space where you don't like what you see in the mirror, and you don't like the fact that you're aging. I stopped looking in the mirror a lot over the past 10 years. Because I just thought it's just so unnecessary. Like, it is what it is. I would obsess about every little thing. It's like, it's not getting better. You obsessing about how you look is not going to change how you look. Like, you spending time beating yourself up about whatever is not going to make it magically change. So then fuck it. Just go out there. For so long I was so self-conscious of a scar I have on the back of my head that I would orient myself. Like, I would just be so weird about it. And it's like, that's not going to make the scar go away. It's not. It's there. So I either live day to day with it. And it sounds petty, I'm perfect beyond this scar. No, there's a lot of shit about myself I don't like. But imagine if I just, and I'm not fully comfortable. It's not like I'm out here with my shirt off running around, and you wouldn't see me with my shirt off running around for various reasons. But there has to be a line that we draw where it's I can't let this inhibit my joy. And it's just kind of crazy.
It is. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, at least you didn't aren't going to commit seppuku.
Well, you don't know that.
Oh God, there are so much. Oh no, there's so many easier ways to go, sir.
I'm not going to stab myself in the gut. And make a mess.
God,
and then what if I miss a vital organ and I'm just bleeding uncomfortably until someone comes and finds me? I definitely wouldn't do that.
Please, yeah, okay. But again, it is a beautiful film, right?
Yeah.
The John Bailey cinematography, the seppuku within the film in Runaway Horses that you
Yeah, because it's sort of crafted around like Mishima like directing himself in the scene where he commits seppuku, and I thought that was interesting. Yeah, it looks beautiful. And I found the man, what's his name? Or
Ken Ogata.
Yeah, he's pretty captivating.
He's in a Kaneto Shindo film called
His body hair has a very interesting
pattern.
He has a patch of like chest hair that's like in a triangular shape, and then he has a mound of pubic hair that's in a triangular shape, but they're sort of opposing. So the pyramid points north at his pubic hair, and then the chest hair points south. But we get close-ups of it, and it looks like it's been shaved or groomed to look like that.
Probably, yeah.
So it's a very interesting, because that also says that he's probably quite hairy in his torso to make that shape. But I thought that was pretty striking, because then he's wearing the like undergarment that's like a wrap. Yeah, it looks great.
He is in a Kaneto Shindo film called Edo Porn, which I highly recommend if you can get a copy of it, as well as Imamura's remake of The Ballad of Narayama from 1983. Which I also really like.
We need to wrap up. Are you reading anything?
I'm still with Venice prep. I haven't had time to read much of Liarmouth, so I'm still making my way through that John Waters novel.
Do you have a quote for us?
No, I don't.
And then, so you leave for Venice on Monday, and then you arrive there late at night or early in the morning?
I land in Frankfurt, and then I have a long layover there, and so I late afternoon I land in Venice.
And then are you watching movies as soon as you land?
No, I have to get up the next morning and go get my press badge and start the day.
Oh, well, sounds awful, but good for you.
Oh, there's so many good films that are about to play, I feel, though.
Meanwhile, I'll try to be luxuriating.
New Sigourney, new Isabel.
Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, bye.
Huh.